Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hi everyone, this is Muhammad Imran. In our spoken language, we do not utter words in isolation. Rather, we connect one word with another in order to have fluency in our conversation or to have a continuous sequence in our conversation. So when we connect one word with another in our conversation, this process is called connected speech, which is very common in English. So, there are several aspects of connected speech. For example, assimilation, elision, intrusion, and liaison or linking words. So, the focus of this lecture is to learn assimilation as one of the aspects of connected speech. So let's learn what is assimilation. Sometimes you may have noticed you don't understand native speakers. So what could be the cause? It happens because native speakers connect words. They do not use words in isolation. They do not utter a word and then stop. Again utter and again stop. Rather, they connect words in order to create fluency in their conversation. Similarly, when you watch a movie, English movie, and you don't understand, or sometimes you listen to songs and you don't understand. Why you don't understand? Because again, that in songs and in movies, the native speakers connect words. They connect speech, right? So one word is connected with another. So in this lecture, you are going to identify and you are going to learn that how native speakers they speak and how they connect one word with another, how assimilation happens between words and how assimilation occurs within a word. Assimilation. In the process of assimilation, one of the sound of one word becomes similar to one of the sound of another word. For example, we have two words. Sometimes it may occur that the final sound of one word becomes similar to the initial sound of another word. Or sometimes it may occur that the initial sound of one word becomes similar to the final sound of another word. So assimilation does not occur only between words, but assimilation also occurs within a word. For example, we have a word handbag. In isolation, we may pronounce it as handbag, but in connected speech, the sound d replaces by the sound m, and we pronounce it as handbag rather than handbag, right? Similarly, we have a word that is football. In isolation, you can say I love football. But in connected speech, you may say football rather than football, football. So the b replaces the sound p, right? So that's why it's very important to learn in connected speech how one word is connected with another word. So most often assimilation, it occurs in connected speech rather than in isolation. Now you may question why assimilation takes place or what are the causes of assimilation. So assimilation takes place because two sounds share common feature in place or manner, sometimes also in voice, right? So when two sounds they share common feature, one has the same place of articulation and the second has also same place of articulation. So assimilation takes place, right? So we will discuss in this lecture assimilation as manner and assimilation as place and assimilation as voicing. So manner of articulation, place of articulation and voicing. So through these three procedure we will learn assimilation, how a sound changes and becomes similar to another sound. Let's discuss. So the act of making two sounds in speech that are next to each other more similar to each other in certain ways. For example, the pronunciation of the t in football as an example of this process. So we say football rather than football. So b is also same place of articulation, right? And then we have assimilation is something which varies. So there will be variation in assimilation in content according to speaking rate, right? How you speak, what is the rate of your speaking, how much you're fast or how much you're slow, and style, what is your speaking style. So there will be variation in assimilation according to the speaking style and according to the speaking rate. It is more likely to be found in rapid speech. As I told you that in connected speech or assimilation is found in rapid speech, not in very much slow or when you pronounce words in isolation. Casual speech, right? Rapid and casual speak everyday life situation, and less likely in slow, careful speech. When you speak carefully and when you speak slowly, so there are less chances of assimilation. Most often assimilation occurs, right, in rapid speech, in casual conversation, right? So that is according to your speaking style and according to your rate. Sometimes the differences caused by assimilation is very noticeable. You can notice, okay, that this sound is replaced with this one. For example, if I say handbag and then I say handbag, so you can notice that it is noticeable, right? You can notice this assimilation, and sometimes it is very slight. But when like native speaker they speak, so we hardly notice that there is assimilation, and sometimes then we don't understand when there is assimilation. So one of the factors that sometimes we don't understand native speaker because they connect one word with another. They connect like one sound with another one. That's why we have difficulty to understand native speaker. Now, generally speaking, the cases that have most often been described are assimilation affecting consonants. As an example, consider a case where two words are combined. We're talking about consonants. The first of which ends with a single final consonant. As on previous slide I told you, the single final consonant, which we will call consonant final. So CF mean consonant final. And the second, which starts with a single initial consonant, which we will call consonant initial. So sometimes the consonant initial will affect consonant final, and sometimes the consonant final will affect consonant initial. So through this way assimilation takes place. We can construct a diagram like this: consonant final and consonant initial, and here we have word boundary. On this slide, you will learn two types of assimilations. One is regressive and one is progressive. Let's discuss. If consonant final changes to become like consonant initial, why we have two words, right? In one word, we have consonant final, and in another word, we have consonant initial. So if consonant final changes to become like consonant initial, right, in some way, then the assimilation is called regressive. So regressive assimilation is the one if the final consonant changes to become like consonant initial. Now the phoneme that comes first is affected by the one that comes after it. Now the second one, if consonant initial changes to become like consonant final in some way, then the assimilation is called progressive. Now see here that if consonant initial changes to become like consonant final, So this process is called progressive assimilation. I hope you got it, right? Let me once again repeat it, that if consonant final changes to become like consonant initial, we call this process or this type of assimilation as regressive assimilation, right? And if consonant initial changes to become like consonant final, so we call this type of assimilation as progressive assimilation. Let me give you first example of regressive assimilation, where the consonant final changes to become like consonant initial. So for example, we have words like light blue. In light, the final consonant is t, light. And in blue, the initial consonant is b. So the final consonant will change here and we will pronounce as it like light blue, right? So t will become like p, light blue. So p and here b, they are similar now. I told you at the beginning there is place of articulation, right? So p and b. So t become p, so we say light blue. On the previous slide, I've given example like football. So we have the final consonant is foot, t, and the initial one is b. So we say football rather than football. So then b and p, they are similar. They become similar, right? Because they have same place of articulation. Another example of regressive assimilation, for example, we have a word not blow. So in not blow, we have the final consonant that is t, not. And then we have blow, which begins with b. So we will say not blow. So the t will become like m, not blow. We'll say not blow, not like not blow. So this is called regressive assimilation. Let me give you the final example of regressive assimilation. We have two words. One is nothing and one is but. So in connected speech, nothing but. So the final will become like p. We will say, let me give you first the example of regressive assimilation, where the final consonant changes to become like consonant initial. Like we have two words, light blue. In connected speech, the t becomes p. So in place of light blue, we will say light blue, light blue. So this is the example of regressive assimilation. One of the example already I have given on previous slide, that was football. So in foot we have the final consonant that is t and the initial one is b. So in connected speech we say football. So p and b become identical or similar. So that is like same place of articulation. Let me give you another example of regressive assimilation. We have, for example, a word that is not blow. So the final consonant in not, that is t, and the initial consonant in blow, that is b. So it will become like not blow, not blow. So p and b becomes similar. Okay. The last example of regressive assimilation, we have two words, nothing but. So when we connect nothing but, or in connected speech we use nothing but. So the final sound will become m and we will say nothing but. In place of nothing but, we will say nothing but. But you don't have to say nothing but, nothing but. In connected speech, nothing but. So this is the example of regressive assimilation, where the final consonant changes to become like consonant initial, and we call it regressive assimilation. Now let me give example of progressive assimilation, where the consonant initial changes to become like consonant final. So here the consonant initial will be affected. So for example, we have our even though. So in even we have the final consonant that is n, and in though we have the initial consonant that is the. So even though. In connected speech, we pronounce it as even though. Not even though, but even though. So here the initial consonant is affected by the final consonant, even though, and we pronounce it as even though, right? Instead of even though, we say even though. So here the initial consonant is affected. Now, another example is, for example, we have two words, one is put and one is them. So in put, the final we have t, and in them, the initial in them we have the. Put them. So how do we pronounce put them in connected speech? We say put him, put him, put him. In place of put them, we say put him, putting, right? So here again the initial consonant the is changes into t because of the final consonant t, put and them. So in put we have final consonant t, and in them we have the final consonant the. So the is affected by the consonant t, so we say put him rather than put them. We have two words like hit, v. So hit, we have final consonant that is t, right? And in v, we have initial consonant that is v. So in place of hit, v, we say hitty. So here the initial consonant is affected by the final consonant because we have here hit, t, and v, we have v. So this v is affected by T, so we say hitty, right? Rather than hit the, hitty, hit T. In connected speech, right? And not in isolation. In isolation, we say hit the, but in connected speech, we say hitty, right? Hit T. So these were the example of regressive and progressive assimilation, and these all are used in connected speech in casual conversation. An example of the latter is what is sometimes called coalescence or coalescent assimilation. A final t, d, and an initial y following often combine to form ch, j, so that not yet is pronounced as not yet, no chet, and could you is pronounced as could you. So that not in isolation, we don't say in isolation could you, but in connected speech we say could you. Like for example, could you sit here, we say could you sit here, right? Or we say would you like a cup of tea. So in connected speech we say would you like a cup of tea. So instead of would you, we say would you, and could you, we say could you. Could you like, would you like in connected speech. In what ways can a consonant change? We have seen that the main difference between consonants are of three types: differences in place of articulation, differences in manner of articulation, and differences in voicing. So in the same way, also we have assimilation of place, assimilation of manner, and assimilation of voicing. Sometimes the two sounds become identical because of assimilation of place. Sometimes the two sounds become similar because of assimilation of manner. And sometimes the two sounds become similar because of voicing. Let's discuss. Before a dental consonant, it will change to dental plosive, for which the phonetic symbol is t. And here we can see a small comma type, right? As in that thing. So that thing, it will become dental plosive. and get those, or cut through. Before a velar consonant, the t will become k, as in that case. You can see t and then we have k. So we will pronounce it as that case. Right? Again, the final consonant is affected by the initial one. We are talking about regressive assimilation. That case. Or bright color will be pronounced as bright color. Bright color. And quite good will be pronounced as quite good. Right? Quite good. So in similar context, d would become b, d and g respectively. And n would become m, n and n. Example of this would be good boy, and we will say good boy. Good boy, right? And bad thing would be bad thing. And card game would be card game. And green pepper would be green pepper. Green pepper. And fine thought would be fine thought. And tingle would be tingle. However, the same is not true of the other alveolar. Consonants s and z behave differently. The only noticeable change being that s become sh and z become zh when followed by sh or y, as in this shoe. So here we have the final sound is s, this, and preceded by the sound sh. So we will pronounce as this shoe in connected speech, not this shoe, this shoe. And those here we have the final sound is z, those years. So it will be pronounced as those year. You can see z is replaced by j, those year, not those year, those year. It is important to note that the consonants that have undergone assimilation have not disappeared. In the above example, the duration of the consonant remain more or less what one would expect for a two consonant cluster. Assimilation of place is only noticeable in this regressive assimilation of alveolar consonant. It is not something that foreign learner need to learn to do. That's quite difficult for foreign learner to do so. Assimilation of manner is much less noticeable. It doesn't mean it's not common, but it is less noticeable and is only found in the most rapid and casual speech. Generally speaking, the tendency is again for regressive assimilation, and the change in manner is most likely to be towards an easier consonant, which one makes less obstruction to airflow. It is thus possible to find cases where a final plosive becomes fricative. So the final plosive will become fricative or nasal. We are talking about assimilation through manner of articulation. So the final plosive will become fricative or nasal. That side. So d is plosive and it will become fricative. So it will be that side. You can see s is then fricative. Okay, or good night. So d, that is plosive and it will become good night. So that is nasal, right? Okay, so nasal, it is also like manner of articulation. And here, but most unlikely that a final fricative or nasal would become a plosive. So a plosive can become fricative, but a fricative cannot become plosive. In one particular case, we find progressive assimilation of manner when a word initial the follow a plosive or nasal at the end of preceding word. It is very common to find that the consonant initial become identical in manner to the consonant final, but with dental place of articulation. For example, the arrow symbol means become. In the, you can see inna, or get them, you can see get him, get him, get them. And read these, we will say read these. So the phoneme frequently occurs with no discernible friction noise. And finally, we have assimilation of voice. So assimilation of voice is also found, but again only in limited way. So it means assimilation of voice is not that much common as assimilation of manner and place. So only regressive assimilation of voice is found across word boundary, and then only of one type. Since this matter is important for foreign learner, we will look at it in some detail. Remember, if consonant final is a leanness that take less force, right? I.e. voice. So if the final consonant is leanness, that is voice or takes less force when you pronounce it. Consonant and consonant initial is fortis, which takes more force, which is voiceless. We often find that the leanness consonant has no voicing. Even that leanness, it is a voiced one, but it becomes voiceless, right? For example, in I have to. So in have, v, it is a voiced one. It becomes voiceless, and we say the final v becomes voiceless, and it becomes f because of the following voiceless t, and we say I have to. In place of I have to, we say I have to. So because there is t, I have t. So t is there, so it becomes also t is voiceless, so v also becomes voiceless, and we say I have t, right? And in the same way, the z in the cheese becomes more like when it occurs in, for example, in the word cheesecake. So the final consonant in cheese, that is voice z, and in cake the initial sound is k, which is voiceless. So because of the initial sound k, the final sound in cheese, which is z, will become s, and we will pronounce in connected speech as cheesecake, not cheesecake. So next time you will say cheesecake, not cheesecake. So this is not very noticeable case of assimilation, since, as was explained in chapter, this initial and final leanness consonant usually have little or no voicing anyway. These devoiced consonants do not shorten preceding vowel or true fortis consonant do. However, when consonant final is fortis, voiceless, and consonant initial leanness, voice, so a context in which the many languages consonant final would become voice, assimilation of voice never take place. Consider the following example: I like that black dog. So I like that black dog. It is typical of many foreign learner of language that they allow regressive assimilation of voicing to change the final k of like to g, and the final t of that to d, and the final k of black to g. So giving like I like that black dog. So they will say I like that black dog. So this creates a strong impression of a foreign accent. So this was all about assimilation. In this lecture, we learn what is assimilation and what are the types of assimilation. We also learn assimilation of place, of manner, and of voice. So thank you so much. Please don't forget to subscribe and like the channel.